Ken McKenzie Middleton, author of Bamboozle, How Alcohol Makes Fools of Us All, from Atlanta, Georgia. Married, going on 5 years now, which seems insane. Created a publication called Ain't If Alcohol Is Not Your Friend. I've been sober, or what I call alcohol conscious, for 5 years. When I started the publication, it was around really educating people on the scientific way alcohol affects you. I want to get that information out. Of course, that led into Bamboozled and why we're talking today.
Yeah, fantastic. I've always loved your messaging in that even if alcohol doesn't destroy us, it will prevent us from reaching our potential. I often quote you on that. I think your personal drinking story is a pretty good example of that. So, can you take us quickly through that, please?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's the big one, right? When you think about my drinking story, it does go back to just what most people experience with college, right? That is where I would say the majority of people are introduced to drinking. You see these movies, these shows like Euphoria, where you have people drinking in high school. I don't think people are drinking that hardcore in high school, but I know in college, almost everyone is because there's such peer pressure there. When I got to college, Janet, I didn't drink at all in high school. I didn't even drink my first year, my freshman year. But growing up in high school, as most kids, I never felt like I was the coolest kid there. Or I wasn't shy. But as most people are, you're anxious when you're around different people. You're experiencing things. You don't have the confidence because you're so new. When I got in college, I had that feeling of not being completely confident in all situations, not being able to dance, not being able to talk to the opposite sex. So my sophomore year, when my friend said, "Hey, drink this beer, it'll help relax you," I was like, "I've seen all these other people have a good time with it. Let me try it." So I started drinking my sophomore year at 19. The thing about alcohol that's so damaging is that it is as advertised. It is exactly what, in some ways, you think it will do. It will make you feel more confident. It will make you feel like you're that person that you never were before. So what happened to me was I became all the things I thought I was. I was funnier in my mind. I had confidence to go talk to the opposite sex. I was able to dance in front of people. That for me began my relationship with alcohol, and it was considered my best friend. It was my buddy that was then allowing me to get through all the things that before made me self-conscious or made me not feel comfortable. Now, progress over time. I go through college, experience the college life, join a fraternity, become the president of fraternity, live that life to the fullest, graduate college, and end up going into sales. And I tell people all the time, and I say this, if you think college is your undergrad with drinking, sales is your master's because it ratchets it up tremendously. Sales and marketing, we know that is huge in the drinking community. So my drinking, even though in college it was a fair amount, when I got the sales job, it turned up to another level because I'm schmoozing clients, I'm going out and I'm meeting with my coworkers at happy hours. I'm doing all the things that most people do in that life. Now, progress over a 10-year period, I see pretty decent success in my sales career because that's part of it. You got to build rapport, how people like you, and drinking helps that. So I see the level of success, and I never look at my drinking as being an issue. Now, I know when I drink the next day, I'm not 100% and I'm just being hungover. I'm like 70, 80%. I'm not giving it my all, but I think about all the positive of drinking and I don't really worry about it. Also, I look at my peers and I look at those above me and I see them drinking the same amount. The thought of having an issue with drinking never crossed my mind because at the end of the day, if you are successful, then to me, that's an indicator life is good, all is well, there's no issue. I was fairly successful making good money. Where things change is when I decided to leave my company in 2017 to pursue entrepreneurship. At that point, I'd been in the sales industry for 11 years. I had good experience. I thought I would give it a go on my own. That first year, doing all the things that you know as an entrepreneur that it takes to be successful, it was really hard. I was still trying to do the same pattern that I did when I was working, drinking every other night, having a good time, going out. But then when I got up the next day, the level of effort that it required of myself to be successful was so much more than it was when I was working for a company because you got to be the marketing director, you got to be the
Mm.
finance director, your HR, your sales, your operations, your everything. that level of effort for me said, okay, I knew that I could do this while I was working, but I haven't been successful the last year. I don't want to go back before I can look myself in the mirror and say I've given it my all. I know I need to take a break from drinking because those 70% days that I'm having when I'm hungover, it's just not worth it. It's not cutting it, if you will. Then my wife and I were out on a Saturday night with a couple friend of ours that we love going out with. And I just said, I think I'm just going to take a break from drinking. I'm going to give it 90 days. And after those 90 days, I'll take a look at drinking it. She was like, you know what? I've been thinking we've been drinking a lot too. I think I'll cut back with you. So let's both do it together. I was like, great. So we both decided that we were going to drink for 90 days. For me, Jen, and I tell people this was the change. I started to work and every day I was able to get up at 4 o'clock and I was able to hit the gym at 5 and start work at 7 and just grind. I made more money in those 90 days than I had made in the previous 9 months. So those 3 months that I wasn't drinking, I had quadrupled the amount of money I had made in the previous 9 months. So in my mind, I'm like, holy snap, something is here. This is not a fluke. I felt better overall emotionally. I slept better. I worked out, but everything was better. I was like, there's something here. 2 weeks after we had stopped drinking, we took a trip to overseas to Dublin for our first international trip. I just happened to have found Annie Grace's This Naked Mind. I had a 7.5 hour flight there and a 7.5 hour flight back. Over the course of that flight, I read that book. That's when everything changed for me because up until that time, there was two dichotomies of drinking. It was you're drinking, you're fine, as I felt I was in my career because I was making money on the outside. Everything looked great. There was no issues. Or you drink and you're an alcoholic. You're getting DUIs all the time. You're doing things in your life that isn't allowing you to be successful at work. You're exhibiting all the characteristics of an alcoholic. I didn't realize there's this spectrum that we're all on. And regardless of you ever making it here, you are negatively, physiologically, and scientifically affecting yourself in so many ways from drinking. That I had recognized over the 90 days how much clearer I was thinking, how much better I was when it would come to reacting emotionally to issues that before I might get upset about. I had more patience with it. Everything was better. And I was like, you know what? I just don't think alcohol is making my life better. I think if I want to be the best version of myself and I want this 90-day experience to continue to grow to see how much mental cognition I can get over time, I need to give this a longer break. So 90 days turn into 6 months, 6 months turn into 1 year, 1 year turn into 5 years. I said 2 years in, I got to tell other people about it because I don't think everyone else knows. Hey, you don't have to hit rock bottom to decide you want to drink. You just need to know that even if you never become an alcoholic, scientifically and physiologically, you're being negatively affected by alcohol. I don't care if you drink or not. I just want you to know this because I didn't know it. And you make the decision, but I want to get this information out there.
Yeah.
That's how ANF was created. Alcohol is not your friend, right? From there, I said, all right, I got all this great information I've learned over the past 2.5, 3 years. I want to write a book to give somebody one single source of it so they can get it all in one fell swoop. That's where Bamboozle came from. And that's why we're
Yeah.
here talking today.
Yeah. I love your story, Ken. I think alcohol drains our energy and our motivation. And obviously, you've got so much more drive
Oh my
when you
goodness.
quit. That's it, isn't it, really? When I think of myself, I come home from work and I open the wine, and after 2, 3 glasses, there was no way I was moving. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to read anything. I didn't want to go anywhere. Once you stop sedating yourself, because that's all we do, then it's like you come alive again. It really is.
Absolutely.
I found it interesting when you said you read Annie's book when you were 90 days sober. Did you say something
No,
like that?
I was 2 weeks in. That's why
Just
I
2
feel
weeks
so
in.
lucky. So my sobriety day is November the 10th, 2018. And we took our trip 2 weeks later, right? It was close
Okay.
to Thanksgiving week. And it
Yeah,
was like,
that's very timely because
yeah,
I think I was about 3, 4 months sober when I read that book, and I was feeling a bit low, like you can in early sobriety, a bit confused with lot time on my hands and wondering why I was
yeah.
doing this
What is
weird
going,
thing. All
what
my
is all this
friends
free
were
time?
giving me grief. Then it was like light bulbs after I read that book, because I realized that I'd been doing this with willpower, and willpower doesn't last, and it's unpleasant and it's exhausting. But Annie's book just made me realize, my God, I've got to change the way that I see alcohol. I've got to stop seeing it as something desirable, because it's completely the opposite, and it's taking away from me so much more than it's giving. But yeah, we're both great fans of Annie's, aren't we? Very grateful to her.
Absolutely.
Yeah, her
Absolutely.
book came out in 2014 and I stopped drinking 2015, so it was perfect.
Oh, it was right on time. That's right. I didn't realize it came out
Yeah,
then. One of the things that I liked about Annie's book and what you just shared about thinking about alcohol as being desirable, it's almost like when you leave your job and you try to pursue entrepreneurship, instead of running away from a job to make you quit, you need to be running towards something. So
yeah,
instead of running away from alcohol to say, I don't want to have this negative life, you need to be running towards what the best version of yourself is.
yeah.
That's going to give you the motivation to keep going in those low moments. You're not thinking about, oh, what am I missing with alcohol?
Mhm.
You're more so thinking about what am I gaining from not drinking
Absolutely.
alcohol.
Yeah. And we gain so much more than we lose, don't we? That's what
Absolutely.
we don't realize as drinkers. We think, oh, I'm going to lose all the fun times, I'm going to lose all my friends. But in fact, it's completely the opposite.
Absolutely.
So, Bamboozled, I was a great fan of your book. One of the things that I really love in the book is the stories. We all love stories, don't we? As human beings, we're wired to love stories. So you were very clever to put them all in. I think you call them alcohol parables.
Yeah. Good old parables.
So
Yep.
I thought it'd be lovely if you could talk us through a couple of them. Your book is chronological in that it takes us through our life stages, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So the college days, you've got Scott and Mitchell. Do you remember how their stories played out?
Yeah. Yeah, the story of Scott Mitchell is very much the story of me in college. So it's around both of them. They didn't drink in high school and they both got to college at 18 and recognized like, all right, this is what college is about. It's about drinking, right? Scott Mitchell both went to high school together. They both were pre-med students and said, hey, I want to see what life is about. We worked so hard to get here. Why don't we experience the full college experience, if you will? So they start drinking at 18 and live that first year of college life. Scott and Mitchell doing their thing. First year, good. They party together. They have a good time. They experience it. Second year, both of them are pre-med. As you can imagine, the classes got a little bit harder. And the all crazy class of inorganic chemistry was one that they both have to take. I've never taken organic chemistry, but I've heard it is the most difficult class in the entire world. It is the determining factor of if you're going to be a doctor or not for a lot of people. So they both take organic chemistry at the same time. Scott struggling with organic chemistry is, man, I'm not doing as well, but I'm going to push through. He thinks about stopping drinking, but he's no, I'm having a good time. I think I'll get through it. I'm not going to cut back on my drinking lifestyle. I just need to study a little bit more. Whereas Mitchell, all of a sudden, he realized how hard organic chemistry was. He said it's very challenging, and I recognize because this is one of the things that affects you when you're drinking. Your spatial recognition, your cognitive function to think reasonably around corners becomes more difficult because of the way you affect your prefrontal cortex and your decision making ability and your ability to remember information, right? Long term and short term information. So your hippocampus is affected. It's hard for you to think around those corners that are the conceptual thinking of organic chemistry. So Mitchell recognized, all right, alcohol is not making it easier. It's making it way more difficult for me to grasp these things. So he said he was going to cut back. Scott said he was going to continue to drink. So Scott ends up getting a D in organic chemistry because he didn't stop drinking. He couldn't grasp the concepts. He was still partying hardcore. Whereas Mitchell cut back on drinking, said, hey, I'm going to focus on my studies a little bit more. I'm going to cut back on partying. He ends up getting a B. Mitchell passes, Scott fails. Eventually, Scott says, hey, I don't think pre-med is for me. All happening because of organic chemistry and not being willing to or able to pass that course. So Scott says, I'm going to try business, right? It's a little easier. All my friends are doing it. Why not? Mitchell continues to go on and follow the pre-med track. As that you can see in the book, their paths diverge, right? Because they're not taking classes anymore. Scott's on the business class. Mitchell's on the pre-med course. Fast forward to 4 or 5 years, Mitchell ends up going to pre-med school, becomes a doctor. 6 years later, gets his degree, first job making 300 plus $1,000. Scott, on the other hand, gets the job. He graduates, he gets a business analyst job and makes decent money, but ends up switching jobs. And after 6 years, he's making 85K. You see how the difference in their decision making showed what their future was. A lot of
Yeah.
times, don't think that alcohol is really affecting what we do in careers that we choose. They think because they don't have the ability to do it. It's not that they don't have the ability. It's that a lot of times if you're drinking, it makes it way more challenging for you to
Mhm.
achieve those things. That age of 18 to 25 is so important for our mental cognition and our recognition and our growth over time. So many people don't recognize how they affect their ability to grow and think long term because of that. The hippocampus, one of the things that's affected hardly by alcohol, short term and long term reasoning and memory. You use that for learning. So when it becomes more challenging for you to retain information, it's because you're drinking so much, right? The amygdala, it has to do with your emotional response, your fear response, your decision making. A lot of times people don't understand emotionally when they make bad decisions and do things. We all know it's related to alcohol. Then
Yeah.
lastly, the prefrontal cortex, right? Your emotional response, your decision making as well is affected by that. And so your ability not to do stuff and put yourself in bad situations really is affected by alcohol. We've all heard of people who make one bad decision in
Mhm.
college that affects them for the rest of their life. The Scott and Mitchell story represents that, and how those years are so formative to us. Not saying you shouldn't drink, because it's just hard to go through college and not drink, but you need to regulate yourself highly, because what you do with those 7 years of your life
Mhm.
during that time could affect you for the rest of the next 60, 70 years.
Yeah. Yeah. You're setting the path for the future,
That's
aren't you,
it.
when you're at college? It's so interesting what you were saying about how it becomes difficult for us to grasp very complex concepts if we're drinking, like the organic chemistry.
There's no
'Cause
way.
yeah, yeah,
I remember in high
and
school calculus, right? Remember sine and cosine. You remember those? Just getting
mm,
that afterwards, I would look at some of that stuff and say, I have no idea what any of this is. Most of us weren't drinking in high school.
yeah, yeah,
That was why we could get all of that difficult spatial
yeah,
hardcore stuff
yeah,
that it was challenging for us to get. If you think about some of the greatest people in life, like Albert Einstein, Charles Darwin, Mozart, they did some of their greatest creations in that 20 to 25-year time
right,
frame, right? The theory of relativity, I think Einstein came up with, I think it was 28. Charles Darwin wrote the evolution of species when he was 26. Mozart and Michelangelo came up with a lot of their great productions and statues when they were in their 20s. It's
yeah.
such a formative time in your life. You can drink, but just be careful, because you don't want to take away from your ability to do such amazing thing at such a young age.
Exactly. Yeah, I was reading the other day that in the UK now, 25% of people between 18 and 25 don't drink,
That's
which is
awesome.
fantastic, isn't it?
That's
There is
awesome.
a movement. The young ones are a bit more clever than I was when I was that
Yeah,
age.
yeah. The only caveat is I hope they're not doing other drugs.
Yeah, so here we are learning to drink at college, and that equips us to go to work, really, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Because we
that
get to work, and lo and behold, there it all is again. We think,
yeah,
"Oh, I can do that thing. I learned how to do it at college."
this is college 2.0.
So, real world chapter, Sarah and Susan, please.
The thing about Susan and Sarah I like is that it gives the story of how alcohol affects our ability to be successful in the real world, and how there's that societal pressure that we all have, that we all need to recognize, right? So they go into marketing, which I shared before, similar to sales. Marketing is sales. Let's just call it what it is. It is sales. It's a form of sales, communicative sales. They both experience what we know as the office happy hour. What everybody does every Friday, you get in the office and everybody wants you to go to the happy hour on Friday afternoon. So the story of Susan and Sarah is that they both used to high achievers in college, did a good job. They both get this marketing job, and they both are hardcore pushers. They both get there at 7 o'clock in the morning, even though they only need to be there till 9. They're both staying late and they're getting everything done. So similar to the first year in college, the first year in their working world, they were both asked, come out to these happy hours, right? Friday afternoon, come on, Susan, come on, Sarah. If you don't want to be a fuddy duddy, you need to join the crew and come do these things. So they both start doing it, right? They go out on Friday nights, they both join, they have a good time, right? They're building relationships, everything's going good. What happened was that those Friday nights turned into, oh, it's Thursday, it's Friday Eve, which was Thursday. Let's go on a Thursday and have a good time. So now they're like, okay, they go on a Thursday, coming in that morning on Friday at 7 o'clock, tad bit more of a challenge than it was before. It's different when you got the weekend than if you need to get up that next day. Now that Friday Eve, Thursday turned into wind down Wednesday. So now they found on Wednesdays they were going out, and it was like, holy smoke, we're going out Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Now, sometimes they would decide not to go every night, but still the option was there to go and drink every night. And then lo and behold, you then had the Monday. Hey, it was a hard first day of the week. Why don't we enjoy ourselves on a Monday night? So now you got 4 to 5 days that they're getting the opportunity to go and drink with their coworkers and do things they want to do. Over time, they start recognizing, I don't know how great this is. So you got Sarah, who's, I think this could be an issue. First of all, it's just harder to get to the office every day at 7 o'clock than it is before. So there's that. The fact that it's physically more challenging for me to get to the office today, I don't think is great for me. But the second thing that Sarah noticed is that when she looked at people who were at the happy hours, there were people that were successful and did a good job, but none of the directors were there. None of the high level bosses was there. She started thinking, should I be spending my time with these? Not that these people are bad, but I don't see the people that I aspire to be at some of these things. So let me take a step back and do it differently. So she just said, I'm going to cut back on going to the happy hours. I'll do it maybe every other week, but I'm not going to do it every week. And I'm daggone sure not going to during the week. Whereas Susan was like, this is fun. This is like college. I'm having a good time. That was her favorite part of the week is doing the happy hours. And she enjoyed it. She really did. Eventually, Sarah kept coming into the office at 7 o'clock, kept doing a thing. Susan over time was like, I'm not coming to the office at 7 o'clock. If I'm staying out on a Monday or Wednesday night till 10 o'clock at night, I'm not getting up at 5 to be to the office at 7. That's just not going to happen. Sarah continues to come to the office. Susan is not at the office. So Sarah's there by herself, 7 o'clock in the morning. And fortuitously, she starts to build a relationship with the director who likes her, takes her up under her wings, starts to mold her, coach her, mentor her, and teach her all of those little things that you're just not going to learn in your employee handbook. All the things that is you need to know to be successful. Lo and behold, over the course of 18, 24 months, Derek gets promoted. Susan, on the other hand, continues to go out every night, comes to the office at 9 o'clock like everyone else does, sometimes later than 9 o'clock. She doesn't get promoted. She thinks she's being mistreated because no one's recognizing her greatness. She ends up leaving. Fast forward their careers 10 years. Sarah is now a director of company because she's worked over the years. She's gained this mentorship. She's grown. She doesn't drink as much. She's really focusing on the career. Whereas Susan has had 5 jobs in 10 years. She hasn't really developed. She's making good money, but not great money. And you look at the trajectory of their career, they're
Yeah.
still friends. But when you look at what Sarah has done with her career versus what Susan has done with hers, you see the difference. Once again, their directions just basing on how much they make alcohol or allow alcohol to be an effect of their life. Once again, very similar to the college world in which we think, hey, maybe this isn't for us. It's not that it's not for us. It's just that we have this thing that's making it more challenging for us to be successful. And that
Yeah.
story plays out in our work career as well.
Yeah. It illustrates it beautifully. It's a choice, isn't it?
Yeah. And we just don't
Quite.
recognize it while we're going through it. The
Mm.
big thing there is that I want people to recognize, yes, there is this external societal pressure on you to drink. That's just the reality of it. Your
Mm.
coworkers would be like, why are you being a fuddy duddy? There are going to be people that aren't going to want to socialize with you as much because you're not willing to imbibe in the same manner that they are. So you got to be prepared for it, but understand and recognize that long term, this is a decision that you're making for your career. And don't think about that, oh, I'm not one of the in crowd right now. It's about where you want to be as your career progresses.
Yeah, I was interviewing an Australian lady yesterday. She had a problem and now she's fine. And she was a lawyer. And
Mm.
apparently, I've just looked up the stats, 1 in 5 lawyers are alcoholics.
One in
Because of
five.
I know, it's shocking,
Wow.
isn't it? Anyway, she was one of those 1 in 5, and now she's fine. She's so passionate about sobriety, she's one of us, that what she does now is she goes into law firms mainly because she's got such credibility as she was a lawyer herself. And she talks about wellness and mental
Yeah.
health. She's got a Trojan horse, if you like. She
Yeah.
doesn't go in and run sessions how to quit drinking because nobody would go. They'd all be so embarrassed. So she does these wellness things. And part of her talk is she asks people to sign up for a 30-day challenge, a wellness challenge. They shouldn't drink alcohol, try and cut down on the sugar, but mainly it's a sobriety challenge. And lots of people take her up on it. And it opens a dialogue. People say things like, I'm actually finding it really hard not to drink for 30 days. I wonder if that means that I've got a bit of a problem here. So it surfaced the dialogue in the corporate. And I think that's so healthy. That's the kind of thing that is going to change this work hard, play hard culture that's been around for decades now.
No doubt. Yeah, that is the kind of secret, insidious problem that we see in the work culture is that there is this, hey, you work hard and you play hard. That statement in and of itself is so recognized and so accepted that
Yeah.
everyone thinks that means you go and work 60, 70 hours a week
Mm.
and then you go and drink like a crazy person. And then you can just turn it back on the next day and everything's good and not recognizing it doesn't work that way. You don't have to do it. And I love what she's doing because, and that's the same for me. I tell my people all the time, I don't consider myself a sobriety coach only because when you use the term sobriety to your point about the Australian culture, the corporate world, people would automatically sometimes be turned off because
Mm.
they think it's about being an alcoholic and they're going to automatically say, I'm not an alcoholic. They're not talking to me. I consider myself a wellness expert, a wellness advocate is
Yeah.
what I say,
Yeah.
because it's not about you being an alcoholic. It's about you saying, am I giving myself the best chance to be emotionally, mentally, and psychologically as well off as I can? I tell people all the time, there is no way you are 100% as emotionally, psychologically, and physiologically healthy if you drink alcohol on a consistent basis, not as well as you could be. It is
Yeah.
absolutely impossible. If you want to be as well as you possibly can, you got to give sobriety, alcohol consciousness a go.
Yeah. It's about living our best lives, isn't it, really?
That's it. That's it. Without a doubt.
One of the joys of sobriety is when your life opens out again and gradually you'll begin to enjoy those everyday pleasures.
Absolutely.
But you will have to do the work and look for them and think, what did I used to enjoy before I spent all my spare time drinking?
Yeah. And the sad thing about it, Janet, and this is why I put the message out there for so many people. People think it's natural part of life in the sense that, oh, I'm 41 and we talk about midlife crisis and they're like, this is just me not enjoying life anymore because life is hard. And this is no, it's because alcohol has made you not feel the little joys that you used
Yeah.
to get as a kid. And to your point, if you stop drinking, you can get back that excitement, that joy of new things, but you gotta give alcohol consciousness a try and alcohol a break.
Yeah, we say to people these days, Ken, when they join Tribe Sober, we say, because a lot of them are depressed, they say, oh, my doctor's told me I've got to give up. And we say, don't worry, don't be miserable. You don't have a problem. You've got an opportunity here. You've got
Us.
such an opportunity to open up your life and change everything. So we try to reframe it, and
Absolutely.
it's absolutely true.
That's it. Yep. They gotta lean into it and give it a shot.
So your statistic in Hollywood chapter blew my mind a bit.
Yeah.
You said over a 20-year period, I think ending in 2020 or something, the
2020.
depiction of alcohol in the movies increased by 96%.
96%, right? We talk about the Will Smith chapter of the story of his movie Priming, right? The concept of priming in which you see something subtly your subtle vision, your side vision, and you don't recognize how it's affecting you. We all know smoking is banned from being advertised on television anymore, right? But you'll still see people smoking in movies now, and you'll still see people drinking alcohol in movies. Now, it is illegal for alcohol industry companies to pay actors and pay movies to put alcohol in movies, or it's illegal.
Is
Like,
it
just like,
really?
yeah, you can't, you're not supposed to do it. Like, it can't,
Wow.
it's almost, here's the thing. It's illegal, just like in the NCAA, it's illegal to pay athletes, or it used to be illegal to pay athletes. But does it always happen? Absolutely, in some way. So you're not supposed to do it. But to the point of the study, it's definitely happening because it's not just by chance that it's increased 96%, right? Not just happening. And think about how many movies you watch or shows you watch in which alcohol is in everything. It's always depicted. It's just not real. It doesn't show the full picture of what alcohol really does to
No.
you. So I use the Sherlock Holmes example was a great one, right? You got Sherlock Holmes, who's this great mental giant, always the smartest person in the room, but in the same tune, he's an alcoholic that drinks all the time. That just doesn't compute. It doesn't add up where you can drink all you want to, but yet the next 5 minutes later, you're ready to go solve this crime and you're smart. It doesn't work that way.
No.
I used a more modern version of Annalise Keating and Olivia Pope in Shonda Rhimes' story, How to Get Away with Murder and Scandal. Olivia Pope is reading a 30-page dissertation and she's drinking 2 bottles of wine. You're not, it doesn't work. No, come on, guys. In movies, they show the cool part of drinking where you go out and you drink and you're having a good time and everyone's happy, but they don't show you getting into that argument that changed your career. They don't show the next day you not even starting work till 1 o'clock because you're so hungover. They're not showing all that different aspects. And so I believe with Hollywood, just like with anything, society puts alcohol out there because they know that it's an influence to kids. And if they can get them when they're young,
Oh,
they're
yeah.
more likely to
Lifetime
drink.
customer.
Just like in smoking, right? They wanted to have these
Mhm.
these candy cigarettes because they
Yeah.
wanted them to get kids early. Wine coolers. Who do you think that's targeted after? There was a study done, I think, in Europe that showed kids that watch shows related to drinking were 1.7 times more likely to drink and 2.1 times more likely to binge drink in high school. If they watched a lot of programming with alcohol depicted, they were more likely to drink and to binge drink as a result of that. That is just so true. We think that we drink because we're supposed to do it, but we don't recognize that we're socially primed at a very young
Mm.
age to think 21, we drink. You look at all the movies, you see it in everything, you see it in all of your heroes. So in your mind, the idea of not drinking, how many characters or how many characters in a movie do you ever see saying, "No, I'm good, I don't drink"? I I
I
can't
can't
remember.
remember ever seeing that.
I don't remember ever seeing it either. I don't remember a character that was recognized as a sober character other
Oh,
than an alcoholic, right?
we have the rehab movies,
We
but
have
that's
that
not the
is
same, is it?
it's not
That's
some
that's
that's
just
it.
perpetuating the stigma that society's built around the alcoholic so that we can watch them sitting in their circle talking about drinking in the morning and we think we're not like them.
We're
So
not
we
like
carry on.
that.
Yeah.
We're good,
Yeah.
right? You don't find that person that just says, "I don't wanna drink because it doesn't help me be a better person." That is where I think we have an opportunity of showing that more, so more people recognize not drinking is a choice that is okay, and they
Yeah.
should consider way.
Yeah. Absolutely. Back to the book for a moment. Talk about the imperceptible compound time suck of alcohol,
Oh my god.
please.
Yeah. It's one of those things, I think you mentioned it earlier, when you stopped drinking, you was like, yeah, you had all this extra time and you didn't know what to do with it. You weren't hanging out with your friend. You just don't know what you don't know because you're so used to drinking and you don't recognize how much time you waste with drinking. I didn't recognize it until I stopped drinking and all of a sudden I was like, I have all these hours. What was I doing before? Then I just walked the tape back and I started to remember. So let's use like a regular Friday night as an example. Let's walk through what it does and how it affects our ability to mis- effectively use our time. If I'm going to go out on a Friday night at, let's say, 11 o'clock, I'm probably, Janet, starting to pregame at 8 o'clock. So at 8 o'clock, I'm starting to drink at the house. Me and my wife will start drinking together. We're hanging out. We're getting ready, blah, 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 blah. That usually lasts us for 2 hours, right? 2 hours, we're pre-gaming. Then around 10 o'clock, 10:30, we're probably getting in an Uber and we're heading to some bar around the corner, something close to us to go to pregame out somewhere. So we're at a bar from 10 to 12, like a regular bar. And then at 12 o'clock, we're going to hit a club up. We're at that club from 12 to 2. So you end at 2, you go to get food the night after, you go to find a IHOP or a Waffle House or Uber Eats, we come and get Uber Eats, and we're probably asleep by 4 o'clock. So you started drinking at 8, you go all the way to 4, but before you go to sleep. So that's 8 hours of time that you spent drinking. That leads to the very next day, I probably wasn't gonna wake up until maybe 10 or 11 o'clock and not doing anything productive till 1 o'clock over that day. So you got the 8 hours before, then you got the 8 hours that you're sleeping. So you're talking 16 hours worth of time that you have dedicated because of alcohol has affected your day. And if you do anything that day after drinking, then that's a feather of your cap. For most people, you just mully around the house for the next 4 or 5 hours until you start drinking again around 5 or 6 o'clock. If it's a Saturday, to do the same thing again. Multiply that over days, weeks, months, years, you're talking hundreds of hours. Contrast that to not drinking, whereas we're not pre-gaming at 8 o'clock, we're eating dinner at 6, we're getting ready for bed at 8 o'clock. I'm going to bed at 9 o'clock, waking up at 4 o'clock the next day. So I still get my 7 hours of sleep, feel great, wake up at 4 o'clock. From 4 to 8 or whatever, I'm doing a bunch of work. I'm working on my business. I'm reading. I'm all of these things I'm doing that I'm putting in myself. I'm feeding myself. I'm feeding my mind. I'm growing. From 8 to 12, I'm figuring out my girlfriend and I, we're going to do something in the city. We're going to experience a tour. We're doing something that's helping us like educate ourselves or making a memory that we'll actually remember. That's another point. That night before was fun, those 16 hours, but how much of it can you actually remember versus actually the 8 hours that you're out doing something other than drinking that is a memory? So in the same token, think about those hours of effective use of your time, multiply those over days, over weeks, over months. And what happens is time that you're spending drinking, you stay in the same space. You don't recognize you're doing the same thing. You're wasting those 16 hours doing the same thing. There's no growth there. There's no maturity there. You're having a good time, what you can't remember of it. But as far as getting from A to B and B to C and seeing a trajectory of growth in your life, you're running in quicksand. Whereas when you don't drink, those same hours that you're wasting, you're investing in knowledge. You're reading a book. You're learning a new hobby. Then over time, you're getting better at that hobby. You're getting better at that new knowledge that you want to do. You're getting better at running your business. So whereas before you weren't doing anything and you're staying in the same place, you contrast it to you doing something and over time looking at that growth. Once again, just like the parables, you can see as over time, one person stays in the same spot, whereas that other person is going on a different trajectory and doing so much. You won't recognize that until you stop drinking. And then you're like, I have so much free time on my hands. I have to do something with it.
Yeah, and you have energy and creativity, and you can come up with ideas. I must
Yeah.
must tell the listeners that you walk your talk, and we're doing this interview at 4 a.m. for you.
Oh my gosh. Think about it was a Saturday morning at 4 a.m. here,
I
right?
know.
There's no way I would have ever done this. All of the stuff I've been doing over the past 5 years at 4 o'clock, learning so much, growing so much, like it, and it's, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I call this my golden hours.
Yeah, yeah. I've learned to love mornings. I used to hate them in the old days.
No doubt. Yeah. That alarm clock can come real fast. And it, oh, it hurts so bad when you're hungover.
So how can people find out more about you, Ken, and buy the book?
Yeah, we're on all platforms. We're out there, Amazon.com, you can find, or you can go to my website, thebamboozlebook.com. There you can buy it directly from me. That's the best way to buy the book and support me. Also on Instagram, Middleton.com is my handle. LinkedIn, Kenan Middleton, you can find me there. And of course, Ana, the publication, check that out as well. Alcohol's not your friend.
Okay, last question, Ken. If someone's listening to this and they know they're drinking too much, or maybe they're just curious and they're wondering if they can really improve their life, how can they get started? What do you suggest?
I actually have a challenge for that. There's a website I created called dry90.com. It helps people understand, just give it a shot. Janet, you mentioned earlier around trying to white knuckle it is not the way to go. It's just not. You got to have a strategy to do this. And dry90.com, if you go to it, it walks you through the strategy of the things you should do. It's like giving up alcohol for 90 days. The 30-day thing is cool. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Dry 90, dry July, sober October. That's cool and all. But to really experience the compound effects of not
Yeah.
drinking, you really need to give it 90 days. You really need to have that habit stacking, as James Clear said, build
Mm.
upon each other so you can see the actual growth and the exponential change that you can have in yourself. So dry90.com, go check it out. Every week, I'll send you an email with a newsletter saying, hey, week one, how did it go? Let me talk to you about what you're probably experiencing. Let me give you some tips on things that will help you do better, and all the way to the 13 weeks. So at the end of the 90 days, then you make the decision of how do you feel about what you've done? Then you decide if you want to keep drinking or not
Yeah.
drinking. But at the end of the day, it's all about you just understanding what it looks like on the other side. So now you can make a conscious decision.